Welcome to episode 5 of the Young Adult's Guide to Planet Earth, the podcast where we try to figure out life through good conversation. I'm Clayton.
I'm Sid.
And I'm Hunter.
How's it going, Sid?
Pretty dang good.
Hunter, man. What's up? What's up with you this
laughing
week?
at Sid. Nothing much. Just getting through life.
Yeah, man. Today we're going to be talking about what we're calling quick obsessions or fleeting hobbies or whatnot. But first, we have the quote of the week. Hunter, what do you got for the quote of the week?
All right, the quote of the week. Let me tell you. Success isn't always about greatness. It's about consistency. Consistent hard work gains success. Greatness will come.
Who
Dwayne
said that?
The Rock Johnson.
Oh, man. I was thinking you were going to say some, like, philosopher. But, I mean, when you think about it, Dwayne Johnson is a philosopher.
He's a lot of things because he's super, super, super famous.
Well, that's actually pretty relevant to what we're going to be talking about today is, like, consistency and how a lot of times in order to be successful, you need to be consistent. Or maybe you don't be. You don't, maybe not. Like,
well, if you think about it, a lot of people that are successful are consistent. You know, like look at Dwayne The Rock Johnson. I mean, The Rock. I mean, he's super hardworking. You see that every day on his Instagram. So, it makes sense that he's successful. And I feel like if you stick to it, to what you're doing in life, if you just work hard at it every day, then it'll work out in the end.
well, that's fun. I've really been realizing that starting this YouTube channel that I have started for my social media class, like, everybody that's, like, got millions and millions of subscribers on YouTube, they started at zero, and unless they were consistent and, like, stuck with it, they weren't going to get there. Like, it doesn't happen overnight, obviously. I mean, I have, like, 10 subscribers. Go subscribe to my YouTube channel. But yeah, like, and that's what you hear all the time from YouTubers or people trying to make a living online is consistency, because, like, you have to be self-motivated in order to do those things.
Yeah, and when you find your quote-unquote success and whatever you're looking for, you still don't have that consistency sometimes, because I follow this YouTube channel, and they have a couple million subscribers, and they just stopped posting, and then they started again, and they stopped.
Yeah.
And I'm like, if you have that, you can make a living from that. Well, why wouldn't you keep up with that? Well, I don't know them, but maybe it's success to them. They had to, like, step back and redefine it, you know?
Well, yeah, see, that's one thing, too, that I have been hearing on YouTube lately is a lot of these big creators are having, like, mental health things where, like, they've got to step away from YouTube and just kind of, like, take care of themselves, because, I mean, they're putting themselves out there and they're getting criticized every week. So sometimes, like, they might just stop posting for a while, and there could be things going on. So, like, that's the thing is, yeah, consistency is key, but then you got to realize, don't be a workaholic. Like, don't pour yourself so much into that consistency that you stop being who you are.
Yeah, it's just balance.
Yeah, it's all about balance.
Everything in life is about, really.
All right, so we're going to move on straight into our main topic this week. We're going to be talking about fleeting hobbies, is the way I've phrased it. We have also phrased it as quick obsessions. These are things that we get, like, really interested in, and we might take a week of, like, really diving into it, researching all about it, buying the things we need to do, like a hobby, buying the things we need to do it, and then 2 weeks later, we don't even think about it ever again.
Yeah. Can I preface this a little bit?
Yeah.
Okay, so in my life, this has been, up till recently, like, something of, like, just this huge barrier, or this huge bane to my everyday life, because I'll get so passionate about something, and then I'll fall off the horse a week later. And it's something, like, I'll even tell myself, and I'll tell my family, I'm like, I'm really into this, I'm gonna do this, and then I don't. And, like, as far as my self-esteem, like, it takes huge hits when I don't follow through with stuff. And even if it's not something that I'm really strong about, and I don't tell people, hey, this is something I'm interested in, this is something I'm going to be doing, watch me do this, it still hurts when I don't follow through with something, because I'm like, what's wrong with me? Why didn't I achieve that? Why didn't I follow through with that? Am I just lazy? Am I just lack discipline? Am I just ADHD and not focused on anything? And, you know, that's what I have thought previously, and my thoughts have been changed a little bit. I'm not going to jump right into that yet, but you know, that's something like the reason we talked about this episode is because me, Clayton, and Hunter kind of all feel this way, and it's been we like really feel strongly about this. Like it's affected my life, and it's something that, you know, I want to understand better, and maybe you have a similar experience to life in your own experiences, you know. But so listen along and really put yourself in the conversation and think about it.
Yeah. So Hunter, what are some examples of this in your life? Like, what are some examples of hobbies, or I don't guess they necessarily have to be hobbies. They could just be interests or career decisions or whatever that like you've been super into and then just kind of waned off of after not very long.
Well, I got to tell you, probably the biggest one we did together was airsoft. That was, and here's the thing, it was fun. It wasn't like one of those hobbies that you do and it's like, okay, this isn't fun. Like playing the guitar, I got into that. But the thing that wasn't fun about that was I sucked. So there was no motivation to get better because I felt like always that I was going to suck for always, forever. And my fingers hurt. So the next day I'd play and I'm like, okay. Like when you work out and you're sore and you're like, okay, no more of this. And so there was always boundaries. But airsoft, it was more like, okay, I have the money. My friends have the money. We all have means of getting him. Let's do it. And we did it. And we had some of the most best times. I want to say funnest, but that's my
most fun.
Yeah, most fun. But yeah, like it was so fun. And we got into it. A year later, we're not doing it. You know, we stopped. And it was just like one of those quick obsessions. We got really. I mean, we researched our guns.
Yeah. I was online like every day, watching videos and researching like airsoft guns and accessories and everything you can imagine.
I mean, I got to the point where I'd be reenacting like scenes I'd seen in the movies.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
I got in a gully with one of my friends, Cody South or no Cody. What's it? Kilo. Cody Kilo.
Yeah, Cody Kilo.
And me and him were in a gully, and Spencer was walking above the gully, and I was like, "There they are! Don't move. Let's engage the target." And we just watched, and Spencer walked by, not even noticing we were there, and it just was. It was so exhilarating. But the point is, we quit doing it, and like it's just one of those things. Like also, like we also got really into longboarding.
Oh yeah.
And we went and bought all this stuff. I mean, didn't you buy like gear and stuff? Like,
I bought a longboard and then I made a pair of sliding gloves.
Yeah, sliding gloves. Yeah, that's what I meant by.
And then I wore your sliding gloves and ripped them in half.
We were so terrible. Like, I wanted to slide so bad. But it was so scary.
An example that I have that a lot of people might have personally is working out. Like I'll get in these moods and in these seasons of my life where like I go to the gym every day. I'm eating healthy. I'm like doing really good, lifting a lot of weight and increasing the weight I'm lifting. I mean everything. I increase my strength and everything, and I'm super into it. And then one week I'll have something going on to where I have to skip the gym or whatever, and then the next week I won't go back. I mean that's one of the ones that's been easiest for me to fall out of because it takes so much dedication. And it takes a lot of different habits. You've got to eat right. You've got to wake up on time. You got to get your sleep right and everything. So that's one that I have constantly waned in and out of. Is I'll be in the gym for 3 months, out of the gym for 3 months. So yeah, what's one that you have said?
I guess my most recent one was stained glass, and it's something I just saw on YouTube. I mentioned this to you guys, and I was like, that's really cool. And what really enticed me about it is that I saw these videos, and before stained glass was like this mystical art, and like some wizard crafts the glass from their hands, and like it's just magic. But then I saw how it was done, and I'm like, that's not hard. I can do that. And so it drew me in like intensely for a couple of weeks, and I even went to a store and found this guy that was like almost asking me to come learn from him, and which was a wonderful opportunity. And then I kind of just backed away. And just to like resolve that, I actually feel like the reason I didn't follow through with that is because it like after learning how it was done, it took all the mysticism away for me. And it just became a set of tasks that needed to be done.
Yeah.
and it wasn't as intriguing anymore.
Yeah.
Which I'm sure will kind of like can segue later on into something, but you know, I have had plenty of quick obsessions that weren't like that, and it was something that still was mystical to me, like filmmaking. Mm-hmm. It's an art, and so is stained glass. Don't get me wrong, but I don't know. Filmmaking's always just been something that's drawn me in, and that's something that I'll obsess over for a few days, and I'll get to the point where I'm like, I actually make films, make videos, and then literally years will go by, and I won't ever do anything again. Yeah. And you know, sometimes I just don't understand. You know.
Well, I think that's interesting. A lot of these things that I get into, or a lot of these things that seem mystical or seem like really cool, oh, I wish I could do that. Like, if you just buy the tools and do a little bit of research, it's like you can get into that hobby. And that buying the tools thing is like the big deal. It's because like you have to invest money. Yeah. And if you invest the money, so like for example, one thing I'm thinking of is woodworking. If you don't have any type of tools, obviously you can't do much woodworking, but like, just go out and buy you a table saw, go buy a plane, go buy these things, and then you can be a woodworker. It's not. I'm not saying like you. I'm not saying it's not an art, and I'm not saying it's not difficult. But like all it takes to get started is buying those tools. And once you've already taken that step, and then that mysticism kind of goes away, then it becomes a lot less interesting to you.
It just becomes a task, and sometimes like we group our tasks in a day. We group our day as tasks, and then entertainment and comfort. Yeah. And I think sometimes I've found like these quick obsessions that initially to me were a comfort because I would watch them on YouTube and I would imagine myself doing them, and it was exciting for me. Yeah. But then when I understood, I started to class it as a task, and you know, I really feel like that's kind of what differentiated it down like in the long run. Yeah. From that. I don't know.
What I'm hearing and what I'm thinking is, for me, it sounds like you love finding out how things work. And once you figure out how they work, you go on to the next thing. How does this work? I'm really curious. Yeah. Let's see how it works. And you keep going and you keep going. And
yeah, I never thought about that, but that's really true.
The thing about that is it's like let's think of things that you haven't made a quick obsession about, that like you found out everything about. And then what have you, like your quick obsession with the glass. Like, what's the difference between that and, you know, this podcast? Like, it's really simple to do this podcast. And yet, the thing about it is, like, what we're doing is creating new information out of, like, our brains. And that's always going to be interesting because you'll never know what the other person is going to say, and you don't know what, like, you're going to end up talking about. But, like, with the glass thing, it's just, you know, you figure out how to do it, and then you know how to do it. Like, with magic, it's always different. It's always changing and different, and you have to control the outcomes, but you can't really control the outcomes because somebody else knows the outcomes. So, to me, it seems like you love things. You continuously want to do things and love it because it's ever-changing. But when something as simple as, like, glass making, it's not simple. I'm not saying it's simple, but I'm saying you figure out how it's made. It's a simple task. Okay, it's not really that interesting. I want something more intellectual. Help me. I can't say intellectual. Challenging. That's what I was going to say.
Challenge.
Yeah, I agree with everything you're saying, and I think like if I would look at glasswork, glass making, you know, there's so many intricacies into the technique. I mean, it's not about just, you know, getting the lead, I don't even remember the name of it, the cane, it's called a cane, and putting metal inside that and then soldering it. That's so much more. I mean, there's so many different techniques you can use and picking the right glass. Yep. But, you know, sometimes I think I'm more interested in knowing a lot and being able to be good enough and know enough about something rather than being a master of that. Because I wouldn't consider myself a master of really anything, but I really value myself on my knowledge base and what I know. And something else interesting that came up when you were kind of revealing myself to myself, which pretty cool, was that, you know, some of the hobbies and some of the quick obsessions that weren't quick obsessions and they stuck involved like a community. So
yeah, definitely.
Like magic in this podcast is with you guys. And, you know, because I come and have that interaction, like people feed on that kind of thing, and it does bring in that element of like mysticism, and it maintains that because, like you said, you don't know what people are going to say, and just human interaction in general is kind of mystical in a way. I mean, you don't understand a person.
Yeah, if you knew exactly what the other person's going to say at every point, like it's like watching a movie over and over again. If you watch the movie 20 times, is it really that enjoyable after the 21st time versus the first time? Mm-hmm. Exactly. So if you knew what a person was going to say before they said it, then you wouldn't want to talk to them anymore.
Yeah.
So one thing, right before we move on to the next little thing, what are some things, like quick obsessions, things that you got really into that stuck, that weren't really just quick obsessions, but they turned into like hobbies that you still are a part of, or interests that you still have? Do you have anything?
I mean, I'm still going strong with this.
Yeah, but we've been doing this, what, like 2 months? Like, do you have anything that,
well, like,
that you have loved for years, that you've been kind of obsessed with and ingrained in for years?
I freaking love video games. That's one thing.
Yeah, that's what I mean, when I think of you, that's kind of what I think about.
Yeah, that and movies. Like, well, see, that's not one thing though. Like, none of those topics are one thing I've stuck with. So if you really want to get down to it, like one thing I've stuck to for a long time would be, I don't know.
I mean, some people don't have that.
Hard.
That's the thing. That's kind of why we're having this conversation, to see, like, is it necessary that you even have that one thing that you stick with, or is it okay that you are a jack of all trades and a master of none?
See, I like being a jack of all trades and a master of none, because I'd rather be good at everything than a master at one thing. Yeah. Because if you're good at everything, you can help everyone. But if you're a master at one thing, you're gonna suck at this other thing, and you can't. You're gonna feel.
I mean, and that's it's on an individual basis, because there are some people who were born to be the greatest glass blower or stained glass window maker of all time, and like they should pursue that and be a master at it. Like you see all these child prodigies that can play the piano and violin. Like, that's probably what they should focus on. But there are other people who, function better and are going to be better members of society if they kind of just dabble in a couple things here and there.
Yeah. And I'm actually going to disagree with you on the child prodigy thing, because you actually pointed me to that video today, and she gave an example of somebody who was a prodigy as a child with piano, and then she translated that skill into being a writer, and because hand-eye coordination, that kind of thing. And I think that even people that are specialists and who focus on one thing and are just good at that, I think they bounce around a little bit too. I mean, I wish we had a control, one other person that like wasn't like us, because we're kind of similar in how we deal with things. We kind of need that extra perspective, but I think if we play the devil's advocate here, we can kind of imagine it.
Well, I like the idea of being a master at something. I like the idea, like, I've always wanted to play piano, and I like the idea of being a master pianist, like being able to.
Sorry, you came close there.
Okay. I like the idea of being able to look at a piece of sheet music and play that. And I think some of these child prodigies, while maybe they should branch out and do other things, like some of them, it depends on how they grow up and what they want. Like, they shouldn't let their parents say you have to be, a concert pianist. Yeah. I was a lot more deliberate of how I said it at that time. But if they do want to make the decision to be a master, then I think that's good.
Oh, sure. I mean, that's a wonderful skill that they can take advantage of.
Yeah. I want to, don't get me wrong, like, okay, I know I just said I like being a jack of all trades, but I still want to be a master too. Like, I want to be good at, like,
that's the
at least one thing.
That's the tension here, is like, I think people that are jack of all trades and bounce around, like, all of them have that longing to become really, really good at something. But maybe that's just not their calling. Maybe that's not what they're meant to do.
Well, think about it this way. How I said about how stained glass, I fantasized becoming that, but when I found out how it wasn't, this mystical thing, it wasn't interesting. What if for us, this is just another quick obsession, being a master of something? And when we find out or became a master of something, it's not glamorous. It's just literally thousands of hours of hard work.
Yeah. One interesting comment that I saw on Reddit when I was doing a little research on this was, your hobby is not guitar or airsoft. Your hobby is finding new hobbies. Like,
Dude.
like that's what you like to do, is like you always like to find new things and learn about new things, and that is your hobby. So I think it's important too to separate hobby from career, because if you are a master at something, you can probably turn that into a career. But if you're a jack of all trades and you do 5 different hobbies and you don't do them great but you do them good, maybe you can't turn those into a career. So like that's another question you have to ask yourself. Do you want to do a hobby as a career, or do you just want to, be a jack of all trades? And
well, that's assuming that a career is like strictly technical, because
Yeah.
I mean, there are executives of companies, their job is to be a jack of all trades.
Yeah.
They have to take into account every aspect of the company, and if they leveled themselves with each person in that company, they'd have to go to school for 100 years to learn all the expertise that they all have. But because they can adapt, because they are the jack of all trades. And so in some ways we could consider what we have, I'm not calling us executives here, but like,
no, I think that's what it comes to is realizing that in society you have to have people who are masters and you have to have people who are jack of all trades.
Yeah.
You can't have a society of masters. It just doesn't work. Because like it's a great example for business. Managers and people in managerial positions have to bounce around and take meetings, and they can't stay focused on one thing for more than an hour, so that they have to have that mindset.
Yeah.
So let's move on to our next question we got. Like, why do we think this is even a thing? Like, psychologically, why does this happen to us specifically?
I've always been like kind of a dreamer type. Like when I was young, my parents encouraged me like to achieve the most, like to where it was almost like a ridiculous point, but I'm glad they did. And so like I've always benchmarked myself by, am I the best at something? Am I doing great things? And it's taken a lot of time in my life to kind of frame that as something that's not unhealthy, because I think a lot of people have that to where it is unhealthy, where they're like, I always have to be the best, I always have to be doing something, and that's not healthy. But for me, it just, like, I've come to the point where I accept who I am, and so it's not something that's unhealthy for me, but I do really just want to find something and just go with it, and I just want to be defined by something. And so I think that I hop around because of what Hunter said, because I like to learn and understand things, but also because I want to find that thing that, God wants me to do and that I'm called to do. And what's stupid is, honestly, what God's called me to do is to go out and spread his word. And like, I can tell you right now on the air that that's my calling, and yet I'm still going to be searching around for it and not satisfied with anything until I find something, but I don't know if I'm ever going to find it. I don't know. I think that's kind of how I quantify it in my own head, is that I'm just trying to find that thing that is going to bring me fulfillment.
Yeah.
I guess.
Yeah. I can relate with that. Is like, the way I've always viewed it is, we're young enough to where I'm at a point where I want to try a lot of different things so that I can find that one thing, where I think if I try 50 things, I'll land on what I'm supposed to land on. Whereas if I just graduated high school or graduated college and went into that just comfortable thing that I chose for some arbitrary reason, I wouldn't be happy.
Yeah.
And some people find their happiness in that. Some people find their happiness in that type of security and in that type of like, I'm going to make a decision and stick with it. And I totally get that, but that's just not my personality type. So I think we kind of convince ourselves to be this way, because if you've got that personality type, you're going to convince yourself, I've got to try new things constantly.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's the way I feel. Like, I'm constantly trying to find things that I'm going to like grow in and also make it a trade. Like right now I'm in a job that but like I want to like, I don't want to have a set career where all right, I'm going to have to work at this company or work at this trade for 40 years, and then I'll be at the point where I want to be. I want to be at that point now. So I want to like, I'm constantly trying to find things of like how I can like start my own business and stuff, because that's what I really wanted to do when I graduated college. And I don't know, like, yeah,
I think saying that you want to start your own business, that's interesting, really interesting to me, because I just had a good conversation with my fiance's brother this past, like 2 Sundays ago, whatever. I had to take him back to Atlanta, and we talked for like 4 hours about being entrepreneurs and like how that that's a personality type almost that kind of makes you who you are. And like, that's kind of just how entrepreneurs think, is they're not on this earth to start one business and stick with it. They're kind of the ones that jump around and start new things, and they find the cool things. And I've always thought being like a venture capitalist was really cool, because
or like an angel investor.
Yeah, where you just like, you find a really cool project and you help somebody get started to get off the ground, and then you're maybe helping them out for 2 years in a managerial position or whatever, but then you move on and you go to the next cool thing. And that's just kind of like the entrepreneurial mindset that I think is really being cultivated in America today. And I mean,
it's always been here since the beginning of America.
That's like what America was founded on, but like it kind of died out 80s, 90s, early 2000s.
I would say the 40s, when we got into the Industrial Revolution, where a lot of the entrepreneur spirits were dumbed down, because they were like, all right, I'm poor. I got to either choose to go work in a factory and make $10 an hour in these terrible conditions and maybe die because I have 5 kids. Or I could risk it all and try to start my own business and see where that goes. So.
And it doesn't even sound that sad to say that, because we have built a country to where we have this option. If you are poor and you need to feed your family, we've built an economy in a country where you can go get a minimum wage job and do that. And that's arguable. I mean, some people are going to make the argument minimum wage needs to be raised or whatever, but not everybody has to make their own path. And I think that's a brilliant thing. But then there are those dreamers, and there are people like us who do want to make their own path. And we've also built a country that can sustain that.
Well, and even now in this day and age, there's more. It's like that path is widened, and more people can walk on that path now. But it's not easy, and that's what people want is an easy path. They don't want to walk. They don't want to walk uphill. They want to walk downhill, because they want to walk downhill and be on top of the mountain instead of walking up that mountaintop.
Well, what do you want specifically? Because you have the desire to be an entrepreneur, so what's keeping you from that? I mean, are you worried about the hard work?
Money. I have a plan in my head. I'm going to work and save money as long as I can. Well, right now, I plan to stay in my company for like at least 2 years, get experience. No, because like I'm already learning so many things from just being in a business like that, like how things are operating.
Yeah.
But I really want to have my own business and then have another business. Like, I don't want to have just one business. I mean, it might be smarter to have one business and really focus all your time and effort on it, and then that way it can make you a lot of money. But I really feel more happy if I had this business and then another business and then another bit. Like,
well, you're definitely what we're talking about today.
Yeah, because like I mean I knew I was an entrepreneur when I got to college. I was like, either I'm going to be an engineer and sit on a computer all day and type code, and I was like, yeah, this ain't going to work. I knew that the first semester, so I was like, I got to change my mind. So I had to take out all those tests.
Yeah.
And
I definitely relate to that, because I'm currently on a path to do web development. I'm learning programming and JavaScript. But even though I've chosen to take that path and get that degree and focus on that, I still see that as just something that I can use in my entrepreneurial path that I'm trying to create. I mean, being good at programming is not a bad thing for an entrepreneur to be. Like, I can build my own websites. I can do my own things. It's a very good skill to know. So all these new skills that are actually applicable to like real jobs, like traditional jobs, are also applicable to someone who wants to jump around, do a bunch of different things.
That's a really great point, and that's a great point that I wish I could have like understood more when I was in school. And I'm speaking to you, everybody that's listening, who's in school right now and who's saying that I'm never going to use this. This is stupid. Well, those things you learn you build on those. Those are the foundation of who you become. And having that knowledge versus not having that knowledge, in the long run, you're going to want most of it. I mean, I used to think English was the stupidest thing ever. All these predicates and whatever the crap.
Dangling participles.
Yes, especially those dangling participles. Like, it's ridiculous.
So look at Eminem.
Yeah, and look at me now. I am in business, and one of the most valuable skills that I consider myself as having is having a way to convey my thoughts into words effectively. And I'm not a perfect English. I don't do verbs and everything perfectly in my sentences, but like I have enough to where I can write professionally. And I value that so much. And okay, for me, I'm sure everybody can relate in this in some way, but for me, science was always that thing that's just like, this is just stupid. I don't need to know any of this stuff.
Yeah.
Because the world is going to operate whether or not I understand how it operates or not. And however, like as I'm growing up, I'm seeing that it does matter. Having that knowledge, even if it's just something that you can relate to in a conversation, to improve that conversation, to improve that relationship, you never know when things are going to come up. And all of that information is valuable, you know?
Yeah. I think I've learned, the older I've grown and the more I've learned, you start to make connections between everything you've ever learned.
Yeah.
So talking about English, I'm not going to say I love diagramming sentences, but I think diagramming sentences is really interesting because you break a sentence down. It's almost you turn it into math. You say, I've got a noun plus a verb, you know, this is how you make a sentence. This plus this plus this. It's almost math. And so now that I'm doing programming, it kind of works the same way. You've got to break down your function. You've got to break down all the objects you're creating in code, almost like you would break down when you're diagramming a sentence. So you start making all these connections between all of these little things that you thought were dumb, but it's actually just everything you're learning is increasing your knowledge pool.
Yeah.
That's how I feel like psychology. The more I learn about psychology, it blows my mind.
Well, see, once you start to learn how your brain works, you start to be more mindful. And when you start to be more mindful, these are the things you start to think about is like, this is actually applicable. You actually get inside your head and like, why am I learning this? This is why I'm learning this.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think, you know, teachers teach us all these things. And when we're in middle school and high school, we think it's stupid, or most of us do. I think it would actually be very beneficial if they had a class that like was a self-introspection class.
Definitely.
Like write about yourself, write about your thoughts. And like that would have been so invaluable to me because I got that after high school is when I really started to look inward. And my life changed after that. Like it literally did, and it's because of that, and I know it is. And doing that earlier, you know, if you're listening to this, do that. Like it sounds girly to write in a journal, and if you're a girl, then it's not girly. Like don't be offended. Like writing in the journal is one of the most productive things you can do with your time, and you'll understand, and like I do, and you probably already do, that you know, understanding yourself is the first step to understanding anything, really.
Yeah.
I definitely am of the mind that everyone, no matter who they are, should keep a journal. And it doesn't have to be a daily journal or whatever. It can be a weekly journal. Just sit down with a pen and paper and reflect on how you've lived the day, how you've lived the week, what you enjoyed, what makes you happy. And it even if you're happy in life, even if you're successful and have a great job, it lets you sit back and appreciate the good things. And if you don't like your job, if you hate where you're at right now, it lets you step back and say, okay, here's the steps I need to take to fix this. I think everyone can benefit from keeping a journal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So do you guys think that this is a problem that needs to be solved, or do you think that the benefits outweigh the consequences? I mean, being a scatterbrain and being someone who dabbles their toes in the water of a bunch of different hobbies and a bunch of different interests, is that a bad thing?
Well, I used to think it was, and I used to give myself a really hard time for being this way. But, you know, since we've talked about it, I did a little bit of research today, and in the past as well, leading up to this episode. And, you know, I'm starting to see that everything I learn, it's not wasted. I have a quick obsession. I learn a lot. Like, that's my personality, is when I do quickly obsess about something, it is an obsession. And I go from 0 to 100 in like a couple of days, and I know so much. And that information isn't just wasted. It doesn't just empty from my brain. I retain that. And like you said, things are applicable in so many ways And it's not just directly, oh, I stopped doing this hobby, so now it's useless to me. No, that skill, that understanding can help me understand and do something else better. And, you know, I'm less inclined to think it's a problem now than it's actually something that's good. And I kind of embrace that because I've proven to myself that I can retain things. There are things in my life that I have been consistent with. And I haven't quite defined what it is that keeps me engaged with something. But once I do engage with something else, that's going to be another thing in my life that's going to be a part of my life. And it's exciting, the prospect of finding that thing. And also, just as I've gotten older, I think it's exciting to see myself growing, like see my knowledge base increasing, understanding things that I didn't understand. It's just kind of fun, and I like learning, like I do.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't see it as a problem anymore.
Yeah, well, I think that's cool that you've kind of changed your perspective has been shifted just through conversation. I mean, the whole point of this podcast is to gain perspective on things in life, and we're not asking everyone to change their perspective. That's up to you, but this just goes to show how conversation can really help you come to a point.
Yeah, and it has. You didn't hear the previous episode because there were some technical difficulties, but I was discouraged about this, and now you hear how I'm talking about it, and it was purely through conversation.
Yeah.
Well, you got to be proud. You got to be proud of that because a lot of people don't have that. What if, you know, like I'm not saying I know somebody that's a master or something, but what if these like, for me looking on the outside at these people that are masters at their craft, I'm like, is it because they don't like anything else? Is it because this is their most favorite thing to do no matter what and everything else is boring? Like sometimes I think about that, like that would drive me insane. Because when I was playing baseball as a kid, I had times where I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. I hate this. And other days I was like, I love this.
Yeah.
But I don't want to have to be constrained to one thing all my life because you tire out. That's how I do. And I'm sure y'all do too. Because, like, think of soccer. God, when it rained, I was like, hallelujah. Because we didn't have to go to soccer practice.
Well, see, like, I thought differently about that because I love soccer so much. Like, I didn't want practice to be canceled. But I see what you're saying, and I think sports is a really cool analogy to draw because a lot of people play sports from the time they're 5 years old until they graduate high school, and that's something they're like, that's what their identity is tied up in. Like, that's who they are. But then, like, you know, 99% of people don't go to college and don't go to the NFL or go to the MLB. So that's been an obsession of their life. But now they've got to find something else to put their identity in, and that's kind of a dangerous thing in a way. Of you don't want to necessarily tie your identity up into a hobby or an interest, because if you do, then if that's ever taken away from you, it's funny, like in Doctor Strange.
Yeah, that's what I was literally thinking the same thing.
So
I was like,
he breaks his hands, and he's a master surgeon. He breaks his hand, so like his whole identity is tied up in the fact that he's like the best surgeon on the planet. He breaks his hands, like where's your identity then? So I think that's another benefit of being a multifaceted jack of all trades is you don't have your identity tied up in one thing.
Yeah, and if Doctor Strange could have seen that he was just going to become
the
most amazing wizard in the world when he was a kid, he might not have ever pursued being a surgeon.
Yeah, he would have tried to be a wizard and it never would have worked.
Yeah, but what's interesting is he had to become a surgeon. Listen, he had to become a surgeon in order to become Doctor Strange. Yeah. And his focus,
he had to break his hand
that he learned through all of his studies and through the practice is what made him embrace that magic so well.
Yeah. So that goes to show, like, pursue your passions, pursue them relentlessly, even if that means that you are trying to be a master at something. But know that there might come a time in your life where you have to pivot and you have to adapt. Mm-hmm. Because I think one of the greatest benefits of a person like us, a person that does want to jump around and be a jack of all trades, is their adaptability. They're able to say, oh, I can't do this. Well, I'll adapt and I'll do this. I think that's a really good trait to have. I like sitting in silence, man.
Yeah, that was the first for us.
No, back when we used to do cabin time with CT, he would always say, "Embrace the silence." Like, if it got awkward, he's like, just sit in it, man. Just
it's a little
sit in
more
silence.
awkward being a podcast, especially if you're listening to this, because it's like,
It's like, wait,
what's the point?
Did my headphones disconnect?
Yeah,
Crap,
I've
let me
done that
check.
multiple times. I listen to a couple podcasts where they take a pause, and I'm like, I look at my phone. Oh, it's not paused.
Yeah.
I think it's paused. Anyways, so I guess the final question thing on our sheet, at least, is so like, I don't know if you guys know the great Wayne Gretzky. You know the great Wayne Gretzky?
Heard his name. Was he
I've
a
heard of it, but
magician?
or heard of him,
A
but no.
magician. He's a hockey player, man.
It does sound like a magician's name.
I don't know.
He's
When
a
you
hockey
said
player.
The great man, like makes
He's
me think
known
of
as
a wizard.
he's the great one. That's what he's known as.
A hockey player.
Yeah, dude. He's
What
he's the
team?
greatest athlete of all time.
What team?
I don't know hockey, but here's a quote. No, but I know that Gretzky's like the greatest athlete of all time. Did I say Wayne Gretzky?
Yeah.
Because I feel like I said Gretzky or something.
Kane Gretzky.
So like his quote that everybody knows: "You miss 100% of the shots you don't take."
Oh yeah, okay.
So like that's another thing. That's another benefit of being someone who has these quick obsessions is you're taking a lot of shots. You're learning a lot of things. You might land on that one thing that you want to pursue for the rest of your life. But if you don't take that shot, you'll never know. So, I mean,
exactly. You just gotta keep pounding at what you're doing. Keep pounding.
Wayne Gretzky, you miss 100 shots that you don't take. Hunter Bumgarner, keep pounding.
That's not even me. It's somebody else.
I think
the
a lot
Panthers. The Panthers. Keep pounding.
of people. Okay.
That's what they. Okay, never mind.
So, what do you guys think about that? Like, what if you found something in your life that you were really, really good at? Say you picked up a guitar, you started learning it, and you got really good at it. You practiced it for 5 years, 10 years, and you didn't try anything else ever. Like, how does that feel? Like, what if there was something else out there that you liked even
I would
more?
feel trapped.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be the guy that would get good at a guitar and 5 years later be a great musician, like a great. I mean, let's say I did. That would not be my only thing I did. I would probably be into like hip hop or something and want to do a thing with hip hop guys and do like a guitar thing, or I would come up with here's what I'm thinking right now. Business ideas. Boom. Guitar center to sell guitars. Everything's revolved around that craft that I learned and mastered, but I want to connect other things to it.
Yeah.
Let's put that in a song. Let's put that in different kinds of songs. Let's make a club. Let's have a group come together.
So basically, just don't box yourself in.
Yeah.
Well, that's a huge benefit of
Make doors.
what we have is being able to make those connections. Because people who can only focus on one thing, they have a hard time seeing that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's definitely one of the benefits.
Have you guys ever heard of or watched any videos by Mike Boyd on
No.
YouTube? I don't know what his channel is called. It might just be Mike Boyd, or it might be Learn Quick or Learn Fast. Basically, he does these videos where he takes a thing like solving a Rubik's Cube, and he'll document his journey of doing that. He'll learn it in 5 hours or whatever. Like he did one, he learned how to break a wine glass with his voice, like singing at it.
Oh, wow.
He does all these really cool things. Learn how to ride a unicycle. Like the whole basis of his channel was like how to learn new skills quickly. And I don't know. I guess you could call him a master of like social media and YouTube because that's like what he does. He's a YouTuber. But I think it's really cool that he is a YouTuber based around learning a bunch of different cool random things.
Yeah. Which is basically how I am. I mean, if you put a camera to me, I could have a competing YouTube channel,
That's all
basically.
I want. That's
Exactly.
All I want
So-
is a documentary.
So I found it really hard in my YouTube channel to focus on anything. Like if you go to my YouTube channel, you're going to see 10 different videos on 8 different things. I don't have that many videos that are about the same subject. Because a couple weeks ago, I got really obsessed with puzzles. Like this other guy I watched, Chris Ramsay. He's a magician. He does puzzles.
Chris Ramsay.
You know him?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I started watching him, and I got really obsessed with puzzles. So I started to go out and buy all of these puzzles, and like that was my thing for about 2 weeks. I was into that. So that's on my YouTube channel. But like the next week I was totally over that and like on to talking about the podcast and everything. So I'm the same way. It's a weird thing on the YouTube space though, because like a lot of people, when they're talking about being successful, you need to niche down. You need to find what's your niche, who's your target. But like me, I would like to just do a bunch of different random crazy things.
Yeah. Well, he has his own niche though.
Yeah.
It just kind of appears to be like wide. So what's the difference? Like, because I almost feel like for me, that still wouldn't be good enough. Like I would still get kind of bored with the whole idea of learning things fast and like maybe want to make some other content.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, I don't think that's the only content he makes, but I see what you're saying. Like once you start to, it also comes like with once something starts to become work is when a lot of times I'll start to shy away from it. Not because I'm lazy and have a bad work ethic, but like when I'm looking for a hobby or I'm looking for something to be really interested in, sometimes when it becomes like work, that's when I lose interest in it.
There's a huge difference between hobby and work, and the difference between that sometimes takes people like a decade to build up the courage to take that jump because people are passionate about a hobby and they want to turn it into a career, but some people never do. And you ask yourself why. It's not easy. Yeah. You know what I mean?
And that's what I've had to tell myself with, I think you have to have that balance, because I am dedicating that like I'm learning programming because that is going to be my work. And then I'll have hobbies that I'm saying, I don't want this to be work, because if this ever turns into work, I'm going to hate it. So that's another thing that I think is really important, is to be able to balance. Even if you're a master at something, you need to have hobbies that like can relieve your stress, or say, this is my hobby, this is my work. Yeah. It's all about that work-life balance, which I think is really hard for a lot of people to find.
Yeah. Like for instance, I wanted to do stock trading, but I just keep hitting a huge brick wall because I have no idea how to do it works.
Talk to me after this podcast, man. I mean, I've never done it, but I'm the same way. Like back in high school, I thought I was like so cool in 11th grade because I would go to the library and check out stock trading books and like learn everything. I'm like, nobody else is doing this. I'm a freaking like, I'm a genius. You turn around
and you're like, wait, where'd that book I was reading last week? And you see a guy walking around the corner with it. You're like, dang it.
Well, it's not even that. It's just like, I thought I was the coolest person in the world for being obsessed with this thing. And then I literally never even did anything about it. I mean, I was in high school. I didn't have any money to invest or anything. But like, that's something that still sticks with me, is like the knowledge I learned in 11th grade about trading stocks and about the stock market and about mutual funds and hedge funds and everything. It still sticks with me to now, to where I'm a 23-year-old dude, but I have a good idea of how I'm going to set up my retirement plan. Yeah. Which is like something a lot of 23-year-old dudes can't say.
Yeah. It's a seed that gets planted and then it grows, and you don't see the fruit for a while. Yeah. But it's there.
And I will say too, reading books is a big part of this. Yeah. Of this like quick obsessions, like learning new things or whatever. Like sometimes I'll pick up a book and that's the only thing I ever read about it, but like so much of that knowledge sticks around. I read a book, The Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg, which is, if anybody asks me for a book recommendation, that's what I always give, because I think everyone and their mother should read that book.
What's the name of it?
The Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg. We'll put it down in the show notes as well. So it just talks about how to form habits, how to break bad habits, how humans are habitual creatures. I got really into that for the month that I was reading that book. I didn't go out and do any outside research. I just read that book. So I think books are really key to this type of lifestyle.
Yeah. And, you know, something that just popped into my head is it's okay to just learn something. Yeah. I think sometimes I look at my things I learn and I try as a failure because I didn't become a master. Mm-hmm. But what if I didn't want to become a master? What if I just wanted to learn something new? Like, isn't that the point of, you know, educating yourself? The school, like, we don't become a master of every subject by the time we get out of school. Like, we don't research and do, you know, we don't actually do research and go and become these great, I'm a great scientist, English mathematician. Like, that's not what happens when we graduate high school. Yeah. You know, it's just about putting those seeds out in the knowledge base. And I'm kind of reiterating some points, but, you know, that's a huge realization that I just came to, is I don't have to be a master at the things I try. Yeah. It's okay for me to just be interested and learn. Yeah.
And one thing you can realize is I mean, you really can't be a master at anything in this world.
There's always somebody better.
Yeah.
So
Literally.
I think something cool. If you hear the name Warren Buffett, like, what do you think of?
A
Money.
rich country dude.
What?
I don't know why, but I just literally thought of a rich country dude that
Okay.
owns a ranch.
Well, so like what I think of is like stock like investor, because I mean that's his thing. Like he is the master investor. He is. I mean, but like one thing he says, and like his biggest thing is he reads books like 5 hours a day. He doesn't even do like hands-on straight up investing. He reads books about whatever business,
Yeah.
agriculture, anything really. And it's just because in order to make good investments, you have to be this well-rounded person who understands the market as a whole. You can't be a focused. If you want to be on his level, you can't be like a focused investor. You've got to understand the market as a whole. So there's someone who is a master investor, but that is set up around the fact that he is a well-rounded, well-read person.
Yeah.
So I think you can actually combine the two in certain careers and certain instances.
Yeah.
And that's just one example of that.
And if you are a master at something, branch off, because
Yeah.
Warren Buffett is doing it. You probably should too. Warren Buffett doesn't need to learn anything new. He could literally just go sleep, and then he has enough money to just
Dude,
take
he's
care of
making
him.
money while he sleeps.
Exactly.
That's the biggest
But and
thing
yet
with
he's spending 5 hours of his day listening to other people and their opinions or facts for that matter.
Yeah.
But he doesn't have to do that, but he is.
Do you guys know Ty Lopez? The guy that
Yeah.
pops up in front of every YouTube video.
Oh, yeah, I remember that guy.
So
hated
I
that
don't
dude.
necessarily respect his opinions on business, and like all he's doing is trying to get you to buy his $100 class or whatever. But like he does have a good point where I've sat through one of his whole 10-minute ads or whatever. And
Yeah, same here, man.
He sits
Sucked
beside
into
he's
you.
sitting beside his
That
Lamborghini.
Lamborghini
He's
in
sitting
the
beside his
back.
Lamborghini,
You're like,
and behind his
I want
Lamborghini
that.
is a bookshelf.
Yeah.
And he's like, let me tell you one thing. And he's like, read every day. And like, yeah, I don't like him that much, but like that is a great point to make. Is like, and he says his stupid thing he said in the video is, I read a book every day, which he doesn't really read like a whole book every day. He just like skims it or reads a couple chapters, and he gets the main points. And he's like, I read that book. I'm like, no, you didn't.
Yeah.
But anyways, like, I think that's a big thing with if you're going to be a master or if you're going to be a jack of all trades, reading, man. Just constantly learning.
Yeah.
Constant learning. That's a big thing I try to state on my YouTube channel in everyday life is always be learning.
Yeah.
I think that's the most important thing.
That's a valuable lesson that took me 22 years to learn.
Yeah.
So.
I want to get that tattooed on my arm, but I don't know if I really do.
Well,
Think
we can do a
about
temporary
Always
tattoo.
be learning.
I mean, like, if you're not learning, then what's the point of that day?
Yeah, and I think a lot of people graduate high school and graduate college and they're done learning, they're done reading, and that's where people get stuck in a cubicle and stuck behind they're just desk jockeys and they never move up in the world.
Not
And
even that. They just lose.
You lose interest in
yeah.
everything. Like not saying they're actually depressed, but they get into this depressed state where they're not passionate about things anymore.
Yeah. It's almost like, have y'all like, I'm not saying this is why they're like this, but it's like some old people are like just not there. And other people are like super there, you know,
Yeah.
like you can talk to one old person and they can talk to you all day and you're like so interested in what they're saying because they were like, you know, like 80-year-old person that knows all this information. When you go to someone else and they don't have much to say, like, yeah, I worked in a factory. That's it.
Yeah.
I think the difference is half the people make life what they want to be, and the other half take what life gives them.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well,
if you're on top of life,
They-
if you're in charge, you can be happy because you dictate
Yeah.
what's going on.
But
But
I think specifically with elderly people, I mean, it depends on how old they are, but like some of them had to go work in a factory to support their families or whatever,
yeah,
and they weren't ever able to go experience life. But you can definitely, and not even just like old people, but people that are older than us in general, even if it's 10 years or 50 years, you can tell the ones who have stayed curious, kept
Yeah,
learning,
that
kept
passion.
progressing, and you can tell the ones who literally are just cruising through life. And I'm not saying those people that are just cruising through life are doing it wrong, because sure, do that if you want to. It's just me personally, I don't ever want to put it on cruise control.
Mm-hmm.
Until I retire or until I'm in my 80s, I want to be like going after something.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, get after it. Don't let your oh God.
Don't let your dreams be dreams.
Just do it.
I actually thought about, I'm not even kidding, thought about making a YouTube video, just doing the Shia LaBeouf, do it. Just like in a bunch of different places. Like
Best thing he did. Okay, that's mean. Sorry.
Best thing he did. What are you talking about? Even Stevens?
Okay. Oh, yeah. And Transformers, the first one.
Whoa. You're comparing Transformers to Even Stevens, man? Come on, man.
Even Stevens, bro. It was good. And Holes.
Yeah, Holes is good.
Okay, he did a lot of things good.
Nothing quite like that though.
Yeah.
So what are some final things that we have to say about this whole topic?
I think we wrapped up and kind of like came to a really good point there. Reading, learning, keeping learning.
Yeah.
And for me, is that conversation can change your perspective and can improve your life, because our lives a lot of times are about our perspectives on things. And if we can change those, then we have a lot of power over our happiness, over our productivity, and just in general. I mean, two people can have the same life, see it one way. Like I saw this as a crutch, and I had changed my perspective, and I saw it as a strength. And two people, one person has this, they have the same life. One person sees it as, they're tortured and frustrated and depressed, and one person's happy. It's perspective, and conversation can change that. It's a powerful tool. And really, conversation's another form of learning. We're talking about reading and continuing learning. Conversation is just an audible form of reading a book. Everybody's a book. You can just go talk to them and read.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And like I said, if you're the kind of person that's like us and you're not happy, if you're not getting after it, then get after it, Like don't settle. But for those of you that like you're good, you got a job, you got a girlfriend, you got kids, you got a family, and that's all you've wanted, it's not a bad thing.
When we get really big as a podcast and we have thousands and thousands of listeners, I think we should try to revisit this topic and bring someone on the podcast who's like a master.
Yeah.
Like a master.
I want a master, and then I want somebody
something.
that's like a jack of all trades.
Yeah, because I think like I said a long time ago earlier, it's really hard. We don't have that perspective. We don't know what it feels like to want to be a master at something, because we us three have that personality type of wanting to jump around and do a bunch of different things. But I think it is important to at least have that perspective. I think you can kind of form that perspective in your head and kind of imagine how it would be, but I think it'd be really cool to talk to somebody who actually has that perspective.
What if it blows us away that like the master was the jack of all trades at one point, but then they became a master when they hit the jackpot with what they liked
when they
the
actually
most.
found what they liked.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, and that's the thing. I think we've talked about that is with the whole 100, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. If you try 500 things and you find that one that you're super passionate about, then yeah, I'm not telling you to not master that, but I think it's important to stay adaptable and still pursue other things and still be learning about other things. I think that is the one thing I want to take away from this, is that no matter who you are, no matter what your personality type is, no matter if you're a jack of all trades or a master, you should always be pursuing and learning new things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
all right. Sounds good.
Awesome.
That was a good conversation, guys.
Yeah.
I mean, that's another thing, man. Like, the point of this podcast, and this is episode 5, so I really want to drive this point home. One of these days we won't have to say this anymore, but you learn so much and gain so much out of just a good conversation.
Yeah.
So if you're listening and you haven't had a good conversation with anybody lately, go find somebody. Go find your friend. You got to find a friend. Go find a family member. Or hit us up on Twitter. Or
comment below on the YouTube video.
Yeah, and we'll get in there and have a conversation with you. And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to build a community of people who like to discuss important things in life.
Word.
We'll see you. I just love it.
All right.
Godspeed and good conversations.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Young Adult's Guide to Planet Earth. We hope you enjoyed the conversation.
If you want to join the conversation, make sure to join us on Twitter at Young Adult Guide and Instagram at Young Adults Guide.
And if you're watching on YouTube, make sure to subscribe and ring the bell if you want to be notified. Like, comment, and join the conversation.
Talk to you next week.